Welcome back to the Willadelphia Show, everybody! We are back, and the biggest story of the Eagles offseason has finally come to an end. I've had over a week to collect my thoughts on the A.J. Brown trade, and I have laid them out on this podcast for your delectable enjoyment. I'll take you through my emotions on the day of the trade as well as the days afterwards. Then I'll tell you why A.J.'s choices in the aftermath of the trade make it clear what his motivations were all along. All that and more coming up right here on the Willadelphia Show. Oh, welcome in, everybody. We thank you all for tuning in one more time to the Willadelphia Show, which means that my name's Will Barbera, and that means that you are watching the Willadelphia Show, baby. Hey, thanks for tuning in again. I did not get around to making a Philly-based episode last week after we did the MLB Roundtable discussion with my good buddies Porter Kelly and Ethan Coulahan. If you haven't checked that out already, be sure to check that out on my channel. It's a little lengthy, but we covered a lot of ground, a lot of good information in there, so make sure to give it a watch. The other reason that I've taken so much time in between episodes here is I knew that this was going to be the next topic that I covered on this podcast. This is the only topic we're discussing in this episode, and I wanted to process all of my emotions with the A.J. Brown trade before I got on here and gave my reaction. And now that I have collected myself through Zen and lots of meditation, I am ready to discuss. So let's get into it, shall we? Just as 4 p.m. struck on Monday, June the 1st, 2026, the worst-kept secret in the National Football League was finally revealed to the public. The Eagles traded wide receiver A.J. Brown to the New England Patriots in exchange for a 2028 first-round pick and a 2027 fifth-round pick, which would be the better of two that the Patriots have. In his 4 seasons with the Eagles, A.J. Brown caught 339 passes for 5,034 receiving yards, as well as 32 receiving touchdowns. He was named to 3 second-team All-Pro selections in Philadelphia. He also set the franchise record for receptions and receiving yards by a wide receiver in a single season in franchise history. He will most be remembered for scoring a touchdown in Super Bowl 59 as the Eagles demolished the Kansas City Chiefs 40-22. I'll be honest, guys, when this report first came out, it wasn't like anybody was shocked, and I'm no different. I completely saw this coming. I think everybody did, and I think the real indicator that this was coming was, I think the writing was on the wall when the Eagles traded up in the first round of April's draft to select Mekhi Lemon out of USC. They don't do that if they're planning on having A.J. Brown on the roster this coming season. That being said, I'll start with my thoughts on the compensation the Eagles received in the trade. Overall, not bad. And I understand a lot of people out there are probably going, this is a top 5 wide receiver, arguably, and you got a first-round pick next year and a fifth-round pick. This is nothing. I think that netting a first-round pick of any kind for a wide receiver who is famously a diva and has a chronic knee issue while he's entering his age 29 season is pretty impressive, all things considered. Would I have liked to have gotten a first and a third that the Dolphins netted from the Broncos in the Jalen Waddle trade? Absolutely. But with all the BS surrounding AJ and the Eagles, I'm honestly just happy that we got some value out of him and that this whole, ordeal is finally over. But I'll be honest, there was certainly a very big part of me that was hoping that the trade would fall through on Monday and that AJ would be here this season and somehow we'd get the passing offense rolling because we brought in all these coordinators to do that, and that we can make him happy and make him want to stay here for the rest of his contract. It was 100% wishful thinking. I acknowledge it, but that is how I felt. And when the news came through, the first emotion I felt was not anger or betrayal. The first emotion that I felt was sadness. Don't worry, the anger and betrayal comes in later on, but it was legitimate sadness, and it kind of took me off guard. And I think the reason that I was sad is A.J. Brown is the greatest wide receiver to ever suit up in Midnight or Kelly Green for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I know some people are thinking, well, that's just ridiculous. How can you say that? When you have guys like Harold Carmichael. And I think Carmichael is really the only argument. Don't bring up Terrell Owens. Don't do it, okay? He had one elite season here. It doesn't qualify him for this conversation. If we're talking most talent, then we can have that conversation. But greatest wide receiver to ever suit up in an Eagles uniform, Terrell Owens is not. He's not even sniffing that combo, But I really do believe that AJ, having won a Super Bowl here and holding the franchise record for both receptions and receiving yards by a receiver in a single season, I think that gives him an edge over Carmichael, even though he's in the Hall of Fame. But A.J. Brown is a physical specimen, unlike anything the Eagles had seen since we had Terrell Owens. But he was only here for a year and a half. We had him for 4 years, and we accomplished so much more. The greatest wide receiver in the history of our franchise. And we weren't successful enough to make him stay. That was legitimately how I first framed it to myself, was that somehow, some way, the Eagles were at fault for A.J. Brown's unhappiness. And then I sat there and I really thought about why I was so upset. A.J. Brown played 4 seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles. In those 4 seasons, he was named to 3 second-team All-Pro teams. He played in 2 Super Bowls and won one of them, and he averaged 85 receptions, 1,259 receiving yards, and 8 touchdowns a year over the 4 seasons he played here. What the hell does this guy have to complain about? He's paid well. He always gets his numbers that show how elite he is. I don't care what, like the benchmark for an elite wide receiver is 1,000 receiving yards. It's been that way for decades at this point. And the team has been super successful since he's been here. So what's wrong? What's the problem? I decided that it had to be one of 2 things, right? It's either Jalen Hurts or Nick Sirianni. He had to have had a falling out with one, if not both of them at some point. Now, I know for a fact that Jalen is the godfather of AJ's daughter. So something really bad would have had to happen for that to be the root cause of all of this drama around the Eagles. So that leaves us with Sirianni, the crown jester on the sideline of the Philadelphia Eagles, who we have literally seen getting into screaming matches with A.J. Brown on the sideline as recently as this past season. I needed no further evidence. Our Goomba head coach and his moron antics pushed the greatest wide receiver in Eagles history. I'm going to keep repeating that throughout this episode. The greatest wide receiver in Eagles history out the window. As you can imagine, this is where the anger and the rage kicked in, okay? This is the part where you guys are all expecting me, Willie B, you're all expecting Will to freak out about Nick Sirianni. I'm going to cuss him out. I'm going to mother F him all the way through. I'm going to blame every bad thing that's happened in the last year and a half on Nick Sirianni. And I understand why you might think that that's going to happen. But that's not where I'm going with this. And I felt that way for about 24 hours. I felt like it was Sirianni that was the problem. And then I woke up on Tuesday morning, and there was a notification on my phone that AJ was on the 7 p.m. in Brooklyn podcast. And he had quite a bit to say about his time in Philadelphia. On the podcast, he claimed that he and Jalen Hurts drifted apart in the 4 seasons he was in Philadelphia, and that they aren't as close as they used to be. The interview was recorded in his home, where he revealed he had a New England Patriots rug the entire time he was an Eagle. But the biggest news that came out of the podcast was that AJ admitted to leaking stories to the Philadelphia media during his time here, and his justification for it was that he was using it to try and motivate the team. First of all, how is it that you and Jalen Hurts aren't close anymore, yet we're supposed to believe that nothing happened between the two of you guys? That's not how that works. You're never so close with someone that you're willing to make them the godfather of your child one day, and then within 4 years, which is, all things considered, not that long of a period of time in terms of like friendship, you hate that person so much that you want to get away from them specifically, that you request a trade. Like, I don't believe that that happens unless there is a traumatic event of some kind involved in that 4-year time frame. And the other thing is, I'm not even saying it's necessarily our business as to what happened between the two of them. But all I'm saying is I'm not buying, we drifted apart. Like, there was some event that led to this. I don't know what it was, but there was something. Next up, having a rug of another team that you don't play for as an NFL athlete is weird. It just is. And I'll say that, I will say, I don't think it says as much about AJ's character as some of the other content creators in our city are making it out to be. Like, I don't think that that is indicative of some master scheme that AJ had. I do think that there were some underlying motivations, and I'll get to that later on, but I didn't, like, those weren't sparked by me seeing this rug in his house. So I'll say that. I do think it's weird. Like I said, I think it's a bad look and it's weird, but I don't think it's as malicious as some people are making it out to be. But the main thing I have a problem with is the leaking stories to the media part of this. All you've heard from the Eagles locker room this offseason when reporters asked his teammates about the AJ trade drama, all you heard were teammates talking about what a great teammate AJ Brown has been throughout his tenure in Philadelphia, and how much he never let the outside noise or outside drama affect how he treated his teammates. Might be the only good thing about him are these testimonials we've heard from his teammates. Do you think that they feel the same way after hearing you say this? Like, seriously, like, I feel like this is one of the stupidest things an athlete can say as they leave a team in good standing with their teammates. He is either too stupid to realize what a problem it is for him to say that, or he is playing stupid and intentionally trying to burn bridges on his way out of Philadelphia. I don't believe that there's an in-between between those two options. So now I'm starting to look at the whole picture, right? This guy was a constant distraction while he was here. Whether that means he was calling out the coaching staff to the media or he was reading a book on the bench in the playoff game. He complained about not getting the ball enough throughout the entire season. The Eagles started to throw him the ball more to get him to shut up, and he proceeded to drop passes and give up on routine routes. And now, you're telling me he was leaking stories to the media, and his excuse is that he was trying to motivate the team? You know what might motivate the team, AJ? You finishing your route like a professional and catching the football. Like, you don't, if you yourself aren't motivated, then you don't get to call out other people on the team for not being motivated. If you can't catch routine passes and do your job, then guess what? You don't get to inspire motivation in the locker room. You need to worry about your own damn self. And even if he was doing his job, which he wasn't, this is how you go about inspiring motivation? Some leader you are. No, you motivate the team by rallying them all together as a cohesive unit, banding them together behind closed doors, and making sure that you all play together as one. You don't motivate guys by throwing meaty storylines to the most toxic sports media in the country and then staying quiet, tucking your tail between your legs when we're trying to figure out who was the person who leaked the story. Like, I'm stuttering because I'm so angry at this ridiculous report. People are defending this guy? That is locker room cancer behavior 101. And I think it's really telling about who A.J. Brown is as a person. And then he got to New England on his first day of OTAs. And that's when I realized how much of a fraud this guy is. That's when it really kicked into me. Because he shows up all smiles like a kid in a freaking candy store. He walks up to the podium, adjusts the microphone, and then proceeds to praise Drake May and talk about how excited he is to play with a quarterback. And here's the part where I think it's a dig at Jalen Hurts. Who's that talented? He's excited to play with a quarterback. Who's that talented? I think that's a pussy way of dancing around an insult at Jalen Hurts. And then he utters what has got to be the stupidest, most pandering to a fan base comment I've ever heard in my life. Take a listen to this.
It's levels to it, and like I said, I'm enjoying it. It's obviously, I know this ain't heaven, but it's close to it.
I know this ain't heaven, but it's close to it. We are talking about Foxborough, Massachusetts. We are not talking about Maui or Miami or even Los Angeles. We aren't even talking about Boston. We're talking about Foxborough, Massachusetts. I have been in abandoned warehouses with more charm and enthusiasm than Foxborough, Massachusetts. You want to know what the state bird of Massachusetts is? It's the mosquito. Keep in mind, this fucking guy's coming off of 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons and is 2 years removed from a Super Bowl championship. You would think he just got out of a Russian maximum security prison the way he's talking about being in Foxborough. It's ridiculous, and it's 100% insulting to Philadelphia fans that poured their heart and soul into him while he was here. I don't want to hear anybody say, oh, well, he's got to say that. No, he doesn't. Then there was another report that came out after that saying that AJ first requested to be traded from the Eagles in week 4 of last season. The Eagles were 4-0 and fresh off of a Super Bowl championship at that time. All of this information brings me to my main conclusion, which is this. A.J. Brown forced his way out of Philadelphia for one reason and one reason only. A.J. Brown is selfish. A.J. Brown is self-centered. I think A.J. Brown won his championship, and now he just wants to be a dominant wide receiver, and he doesn't care if that comes with team success. I think he requested a trade, and the Eagles said absolutely not, and he thought to himself, the only way I can actually get out of here is if I play well enough to still be valuable, but not well enough that the team remains successful. That's the only way how he's going to trade me. And look at that playoff game against the 49ers in the wild card round. He dropped 3 balls in that game, 2 in the fourth quarter. One of them could have been a touchdown or a big play to set the Eagles up to ice that football game. And on each play, he gave up on the route. And I see so many Patriots fans who are psyched about getting him. And then I saw one lonely and courageous Boston reporter who looked at the writing on the wall the way all of us are here in Philadelphia. Here's what Mike Felger of NBC Boston had to say about the move.
And their heart's in the right place. I'm just telling you, I think it's an overpay. They're the only one willing to pay it. And there's way more risk with this player than you've been led to believe or we've all just forgotten about. He got a bad knee. And he just quit on one of the best teams in the league. Mm-hmm. Plenty of examples of guys becoming malcontents in a loser situation. It brings out the worst in them. They just want to win. They're not surrounded by winning players or winning organization. And so they grow frustrated and they act out. What's A.J. Brown's excuse? He was there 4 years. They made the playoffs 4 years. He made 2 Pro Bowls, 2 Super Bowls, won a championship. And he was miserable. Why? That would concern the hell out of me. If Mike Vrabel were not here, they would not come close to this player. This is the kind of thing they never did during the meat of the Brady-Belichick years.
Finally, somebody else is seeing it the way we're seeing it. He's the only person in Boston courageous enough to look at the writing on the wall. And I'll wrap up this episode by saying this, okay? 4 days after the Eagles won Super Bowl 59, A.J. Brown posted on Instagram saying he doesn't feel fulfilled after winning a championship and realized that he gets his love for football by dominating his opponent and not based on the team's success. A.J. Brown doesn't care about winning, and yet A.J. Brown will go down as the greatest wide receiver in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. And despite that, I think he will more be remembered for the way in which he left Philadelphia than what he did while he was here. As for those people panicking and saying that this is marking the end of any run of success for the Eagles, I think you need to back up and look at really what happened with this trade. The Eagles traded a first rounder and a third rounder to the Tennessee Titans in 2022 for A.J. Brown. They got 4 incredibly successful seasons out of him where he set franchise record and even earned MVP votes. We won Super Bowl 59, a game that A.J. Brown scored a touchdown in. And then we traded him to the New England Patriots for a first and a fifth round pick 4 years after the fact. It's remarkable value when you look at the bigger picture. It is. And I know it feels like less of a sure thing, but the Eagles have made a lot of really nice moves this offseason to prepare for life without A.J. Brown. I know he's a rookie, but I love Mekhi Lemon from the early stages. The Eagles seem to also be very high on Dontavion Wicks, who they acquired from the Packers this offseason, and they also brought in veteran receivers like Elijah Moore and Hollywood Brown. The Eagles are going to be fine, and they finally have a group of wide receivers who care about winning football games more than anything. A.J. is gone, and so are the distractions. And I, for one, can't wait to see what Devontae Smith looks like as a wide receiver 1 next season. That is going to do it for this episode of the Willadelphia Show. We thank you all for tuning in one more time. Do you think the Eagles got enough in return for A.J. Brown? Is he the greatest wide receiver in Eagles history? And how do you think Devontae Smith will perform as the new number 1 option? Let me know all of that and more down in the comments. Like and subscribe to Willadelphia Sports and make sure to follow us on any and all social media platforms. I'm out of here. Go Birds and Kapuya.